All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is our last video. So this is conclusions. So again, you need to read these conclusions on your own. I'm really only here to help you understand the questions and walk you through writing that conclusion that is better than the one we have. So again, or at least for the first time, we've got two paragraphs that are more similar in length than some of the previous ones that we might have looked at. So let's kind of look at them a little bit more closely. Which conclusion really seems better? I'm going to say that, as previously, I think student A does do it a little bit better. Oh, I need a circle. Student B does a good job, though. This is not a terrible conclusion in either one. I think student A just does it a little bit better. So what does student A do that student B doesn't? First, they start by restating their thesis. So remember that thesis is that sentence that lists exactly what we're going to talk about. You have to put that in different words when you start your conclusion. That's what lets me know you're starting your conclusion rather than in conclusion. That's boring. Don't do that. All right, next, they give us some very specific points for why, or basically what they used in their body paragraphs. They use some really specific examples. So, uses specific examples to show what points they made in their body paragraph. I think student A also does a better job of leaving the reader thinking about the future. Student B tries to do it, but they just aren't as successful. So does a better job leaving the reader thinking about the future. All right, next one. Do both essays summarize the important parts they made in their essay? What points are they? So I would say that yes, they do, but student A does a better job. So student A has clear points. Let's see. One, gas was cheap. So gasoline was cheap and easy to find. All right. Next reason, gas-powered cars were cheaper. And then there's only two listed. Whereas student B, let's see, let's see, so gas-powered cars were cheaper. Gas-powered cars were easy to find. But then it talks about gas becoming expensive, so that kind of contradicts. So they both really only have 2 points. You should have your third in there. But I do think student A does it, oh goodness, a little bit better. So next one, does the conclusion start by restating a thesis? So our first one, student A does, but our second one, student B does not. So student A and yes. All right. Now we're going to look at student D's conclusion, and we're going to rewrite the conclusion so it looks more like student A's conclusion, or even better than that. So here we go. Student D, here we go. In conclusion, the passage, the history of the electric car, shows how gas-powered cars got more popular than electric cars, from the way they were cheaper than electric cars and how throughout the 1900s, how better the gasoline-powered cars started getting an electric car starter than having to deal with having to hand crank it for a long time. Now electric cars are more popular. So there's a lot of grammar mistakes. It's a little bit hard to understand. We're going to spice it up, make it a little bit better. So first, we're going to restate the thesis. And I just used the example I gave right here. I just kind of switched it up. Electric cars lost their popularity because, unlike gas-powered cars, they were not good for traveling long distances, they were much more expensive, and they were less convenient to use because of their fuel source. So again, I switched it up by going from gas-powered cars to electric cars, but I'm still kind of talking about gas-powered cars. So it's a little confusing, but basically you're just switching up whatever your thesis was. And again, if you don't have a thesis or you don't know what to put, here's an example on the page right before it. All right, next, what important point was made in body paragraph 1? Use the reason of gas-powered cars being cheaper to buy. So I wrote a few sentences about this one. With the mass production of gas-powered cars, the purchase price for these vehicles was significantly cheaper when compared to electric vehicles like the Roadster. A cheaper purchase price meant that any American family could afford to have a new gas-powered vehicle, while only the wealthy could truly afford the expense of an electric one. They also were the only ones that had electricity, so you had to be somewhat wealthy or somewhat well off to have an electric car. All right, what important point was made in body paragraph 2? Use the reason of gasoline being easier to find and cheaper. So not only were gas vehicles initially cheaper, it was also cheaper and easier to utilize them because their fuel source was much more abundant when compared to the scarcity of electricity in rural areas. Again, this serves as another reason why Americans looking to travel would choose a gas-powered car over an electric one. And then last but not least, we've got our mic drop sentence. That's a sentence that connects to your topic, leaves your reader thinking. Basically, it leaves them, it's like almost a call to action. So, with modern technology constantly advancing, one has to wonder if the electric car is really the future, or if something new like the gas-powered car will come and take the field of transportation by storm. So, we've got that. It leaves us kind of thinking about, well, what if the electric car isn't the future? So, now we're going to read it all together and just make sure it makes sense. Electric cars lost their popularity because, unlike gas-powered cars, they were not good for traveling long distances. They were much more expensive and they were less convenient to use because of their fuel source. With the mass production of gas-powered cars, the purchase price for these vehicles was significantly cheaper when compared to electric vehicles like the Roadster. A cheaper purchase price meant that any American family could afford to have a new gas-powered vehicle, while only the wealthy could truly afford the expense of an electric one. Not only were gas vehicles initially cheaper, it was also cheaper and easier to utilize them because their fuel source was much more abundant when compared to the scarcity of electricity in rural areas. Again, this serves as another reason why Americans looking to travel would choose a gas-powered car over an electric one. With modern technology constantly advancing, one has to wonder if the electric car is really the future, or if something new, like the gas-powered car, will come and take the field of transportation by storm. And that is the end of our conclusion video. Hopefully this helped you with your conclusions. Good job, guys. See you tomorrow.